Hey, what's going on? Marjore and everybody else on the board, YouTube. I'm on my way to a kickback right now, so I hope I don't get interrupted by my cell phone, but I did just listen to your video, and I thought it was rather fascinating. And I've also did sort of like a YouTube swim just a little while ago, and I found some really, really interesting videos pertinent to the meaning of life, the existence of meaning in things. Excuse me, just the notions behind meaning in things. And so this really puts an interesting spin on my perspective of what I think about this question of what ought to be preferred, life or death, if you had an option, immortality basically, or immediate death, is what I mean to say. And I definitely found very interesting what you learned in your class about, you listed two main points that really stand out at this point. And hey, what's up? I didn't really have a lot of time to the other day to finish my response, so I'm gonna disregard a lot of the other videos that I already shot, and pretty much had to interrupt and cut off because I kept getting a cell phone call, leading towards the preponderance of death. And there goes my phone. Shit. If I were to entertain the possibility I was immortal, excuse me, if everybody was immortal and value for this whole amount of time. But keep in mind, since he's never gonna die physically, and he's gonna... Oh shit. What was I talking about now? It's getting fucking annoying. Excuse me. My batteries were mixed up, and so this camera keeps dying, and I can't remember which ones are new batteries, which ones are not. Anyway. Two main concerns that you put on the table, and that was regarding immortality, that is, that if everybody dies, there would be no room left to literally on this planet, because if we can think about this for a second, theoretically, every generation that creates a baby is thereby going to be immortal. So there's a beginning to a person's life, but there is no end. It's just a continuum. And what that inevitably would do would be to amount to there being no more physical space for a planet size like Earth to sustain us. And where next would we go? Outer space? And if that was the case, would we even die if we were to run out of room, as it were? Could we die? That puts, I think, really ardent the question, what does death mean? If you're immortal, what does it mean to say that you cannot die? If death is namely that which the material part of us deteriorates, but the thinking thing, as Descartes would have it, still persists and still flourishes, with the same, I guess we could put this on a par with the same amount of realness that natural numbers have, and except that in this case we still understand things. We're a consciousness, except we're just nowhere in a physical realm. We're in an immaterial realm, as it were. With that being said, if that's what we want to call death, then I suppose that we really never would die, and we would continue living and living and living. However, if death means the destruction of the physical constituents that make up the body, that make up, yeah, really just the body, the organs, the tissues, the cells, the physical stuff, the particles, the physics and anatomy behind the body, basically. If all that is considered, if that were to deteriorate, if that constitutes death, then there would be no such thing as immortality. But I suppose the former rather than the latter, that we consider death to be the annihilation of the thinking thing, or if not, some people probably would say both, which is undoubtedly a reasonable answer. So we have to choose which speculation to kind of dive into, and I'm willing to take every avenue in this one, or at least the ones that I mentioned. I'm sure there's plenty more that I can't think about at present. So one of which is immortality, wherein the soul, the mind, as it were, the thinking thing, Descartes' thinking thing, that each of us have,
is a thing that will never die. But the body will die eventually. The body will deteriorate, I should say. So if we take that thought, and we'll call this thought A, and then we'll move on to thought B, which would, thought B would be the annihilation of the physical, that constituting death. Moving on to thought A, would we have to worry about room and if we were to all physically occupy? No, because you see, the physical bodies would eventually deteriorate. I mean, hypothetically, if we were to continue living and living and living, perhaps as we age, there happens to be some sort of curve where we get older and we look older. And at that point where we look older and we start growing downwards, we start having to get pampered again, we get senile, maybe a little bit of brain defects, and not defects, excuse me, but things that constitute dysfunctionalities, like, I don't know, Alzheimer's disease, where you start losing some of your memory. Things like this that eventually lead to the deterioration of a person. Perhaps the body, the physical part of the body, deteriorates over time, but the thinking thing persists, and that is one version of immortality. And if that's the case, that thinking thing might still worry about its deterioration of the material body that it's encompassed in, but nonetheless still has an endless eternity to swim around in, which, since immaterially we are not occupied or surrounded by physical space, or we don't know that, at least we don't know where, if there would actually be some sort of spatial dimension or foreground we can stand upon and you know, occupy a sort of space, if we were this immaterial body, this thinking thing. It would seem to me that, you know, overpopulating the planet wouldn't be an issue at all. Now, let's take into consideration thought B. Now consider the possibility that the annihilation of the body itself, the material, is what constitutes death. That's what constitutes death. That would change around a lot of things, like ailments, like Alzheimer's disease, diseases itself, cancer, dysfunctionalities that deteriorate the body. If we were to take that into consideration, hypothetically, it wouldn't make sense to say that the immaterial part of our bodies are able to get certain, you know, ailments, because these ailments would really be metaphysically accidents or paradoxes, because how exactly could you receive an ailment, which an ailment is supposed to make you deteriorate, if your body is it cannot deteriorate completely? Or maybe it's not a paradox. Maybe it's something like your body could deteriorate a little bit, maybe a cough, a sneeze, a cough, a fever, or something bad, but you can never get to that point so low where you're actually going to die. So maybe you can still feel some sorts of pain and stuff, but maybe you could, if somebody tortures you, cuts off every toenail, you could feel it, but it's nothing that's ever going to surmount to your complete annihilation of the body. But if we think about that even further theoretically, if somebody cuts off your head, oh, you see, well, maybe it is paradoxical, because you see, if somebody cuts off your head, there is no more neural relation, and that's what seems to be the connection between mind and body. And if you cut that off, I don't see exactly how somebody could continue living. That would be the deterioration of you materially. But if one is said to be immortal in the sense of, you know, annihilation, death being the annihilation of the physical body, then it would be impossible, really, to cut off somebody's head. Literally, something fairy-like, magical, even comical would arise. If you try cutting off somebody's head, then literally the sword would either have to go through it, it would have to stop right there, or it would have to cut it through and then re-heal back, because obviously immortality, in this sense, in sense B, is supposedly granting a sort of infinite physical substance. And it's with that it would make sense to cut off certain important relations. And that also puts a spin on, you know, what would happen to your arm if you cut it off. I mean, that's a function. And then I suppose it boils down to what is needed to make you, as in this strictly material sense. If you were to cut off the arm, I mean, does that constitute part of you being dead?